All right. Great to see everybody. We're going to return to the open meeting for at this time. And we're going to go to item number 5, public comments related to February 6, 2025 agenda items.
President Owens, we have no comments this evening.
No public comments this evening. Thank you very much. All right, if you would, join me for a moment for our invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity together as a community, as staff, and as board members. Thank you for this opportunity to serve our community. Thank you, Lord, for each of these board members, the time they give. Thank you for each of these community members that are here. Lord, we lift up each other, and we pray for you to be in our hearts and our minds as we do this work. Lord, be with those families that in our district and around traveling and things. Lord, just watch over us and keep us safe. In Christ's name, amen. All right, item number 7, presentation from our Bond Planning Committee. Ms. Cordell.
Thank you. In Lovejoy ISD, we believe in providing excellent student opportunities, prioritizing safety and security, supporting students and teachers, and having the tools they need to succeed, as well as emphasizing efficient operations. As a part of this commitment, we have been engaged in a community-based capital asset study process that began back in 2022. So we have been at this for a while and are very grateful for the stakeholders that have been involved in this process. The Capital Planning Committee over that time period held a total of 10 meetings, and that transitioned into a Bond Planning Committee, which held 6 meetings. We had a total of 49 stakeholders consisting of students, parents, and community members that served on our Bond Planning Committee. They held their final meeting here at the end of January. I want to make sure that I extend my deep gratitude to our students, parents, and educators and community members for their generous commitment of time over the involvement of the Bond Planning Committee, because our legacy of excellence here in Lovejoy ISD would certainly not be possible without this level of stakeholder involvement and commitment. If you served as a member of the Bond Planning Committee and are here this evening, would you be willing to stand up so that we can recognize you? Tonight, we recognize the culmination of this collective effort with the presentation from the Bond Planning Committee. They will present their recommendation to our Board of Trustees. I'd like to welcome Henri Freelow, Pamela Saylor, and Jean Jansen for their work on this committee, as well as being willing to serve as representatives with the presentation this evening. Unfortunately, Brian Carlson was unable to join us due to illness, and we wish him a very quick recovery. This evening, we will also hear from Thomas Willman, our CFO, and Kyle Percival, who is our Executive Director of District Support Services. So I will hand it over to your very capable hands.
Do you want to go first or you want me? Oh, okay. Thank you, Superintendent Cordell, School Board. Thank you, leadership team. My name is Henri Freelow. I was asked to be on the Strategic Capital Planning Committee and also the Bond Planning Committee. I've been in this school district since 2010. My wife, Allison, actually found the school district for us to come to. And then we've had 3 daughters attend school here. Margot now is completed and at Oklahoma. Eloise is a junior, and Gwyneth's in 8th grade playing basketball at the moment. So we're doing good tonight. But, you know, I was happy to be on this, and thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of the process and to be able to review everything of this district and make this recommendation.
All right, and now I'm short. Good evening. My name is Pamela Saylor, and my family, we moved to Lovejoy specifically. We uprooted our whole lives 2.5 years ago to live here for Lovejoy. So it's a big deal to be a Lovejoy Leopard. I'm the proud wife of my husband, Matt. We've been married 20 years this year. We have 3 kiddos. One's in LCDC, which is the Lovejoy Child Development Center. She's a 4-year-old. I have a 7-year-old at Puster. And I have a 14-year-old who is cheering right now for Henri, whose daughter, who's playing basketball. She's at Willow Springs. So my 3 children are Evelyn, Ethan, and Dorothy. I'm that mom who wants to be the room mom. I'm the one who raises her hand. I like to know things. I don't just come with this idea of I'm going to say yes to everything, although if it's volunteering, that's pretty much a given that I'll say yes. But I wanted to come and advocate for this school district that we uprooted our whole lives to come and be here. So I cherish so much about the fact that our Lovejoy Leopards, whether they're a senior in high school or a kindergarten, we're all one family, whether the parents or the grandparents that live here, that we all have the same goal. We're all rowing the same direction, and I love that. So as I advance into kindergarten for my last time this coming year with my 4-year-old, and I also advanced into high school, Lord help me, that's really scary, with my 14-year-old. I'm just really pleased to be a part of this committee, and I thank all of you for hearing us tonight.
I'm Gene Jansen. I'm the newest member of the community probably, and certainly on this committee. We've lived here 6 weeks now. I saw that this bond committee was coming up, and I had some experience with that in Georgetown, Texas. Served on 3 different bond committees and decided to apply for this one because I really like doing this kind of work and digging into what we need to keep our schools going. Now, here's my reason for wanting to keep the schools strong. And the reason that I have served on this committee and am here to make this recommendation tonight. I've been a realtor for 20 years. I've sold a lot of property in Georgetown over 20 years. And in doing so, I've come to learn that if you don't have a good property, your school system's going to go down. The way we maintain our property values in this town is by having a strong school and a strong school system. We can't let our schools get tired. We can't let our schools get run down. We've got to keep those schools going strong. We want to be the shining light that we have already enjoyed in Lovejoy High School. So that's a big reason why I'm a part of this. My wife and I moved here. She has 2 daughters in the community of Fairview, and we've got 7 grandkids, 6 of them in Lovejoy school system. So, do we have an investment? You bet we've got an investment. It's an emotional investment, but we do pay some taxes. We moved to Heritage Ranch. Don't have any schools. We pay, frozen tax. But guess what? We're invested. And I want to deliver Heritage Ranch to win this bond. So anyway, it is a strong investment emotionally, but very much a real thing, and you're going to see that tonight in our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. I was lucky enough to be at Gene's table, and just to hear him talk, he does voiceovers. I'm just like, let's have him do some voiceovers for the school, right? Our legacy of excellence. So the times I've attended our graduation, Trustee Owens, you do a long list of all our excellence that we go through. Every different department, every different athletic program, and what we achieved throughout the years, just through that year. I think it goes maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I don't know how long that part of it is. And you've mentioned before that you even have left stuff out, and people come back and say, hey, don't forget about us. But this is, we talk about Lovejoy, we talk about excellence, and that's what we want to do. And as we go around and we talk about this bond committee, to continue that excellence, we've got to touch our facilities, right? Our facilities need to be kept up to be excellent along with what our students are providing back to us. It's about the students, but we got to give them an excellent place to be able to do those things. We visited almost 1 million square feet of campuses and facilities as we went through this. And as I said before, I was on both the Strategic Capital Planning Committee and the Bond Capital Planning Committee, so saw it over and over, right? And there's things that as a community member you would not know needed repair, right? You wouldn't know until you actually got in there and you started to see behind the scenes, whether it be the cafeteria lines or whether it be the playgrounds. And it's one of those things where if we don't invest in it, like Gene said, if we don't invest in our assets, those assets are going to depreciate. And the assets of Lovejoy ISD are what makes our school district strong. Go over the timeline. If you look at this, we started, well, 2014 was the last time. It's very, very, very faint over there, but that's the last time we had any kind of real assessment and bond that came out, right? And then you start looking at November of 2022, when we started the Strategic Capital Planning Committee and started going through to actually assess all of our facilities, and then just the amount of time that was put in, not only by people, you know, it's amazing to see all the people that showed up here tonight that were on those committees. That is great dedication to our school district. But you can see what the team did, what we were able to experience by them, going through that and using their outside resources to basically go through and show us that. So now we end up here, February 2025, and we've gone through it, and we've gotten to a point to where we are now ready to make a recommendation.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who is a part of this committee. So from a representation of our entire community, I thought this was just a really exciting opportunity. So first, there was an application, and people had the opportunity to come and decide to be a part of this. I would say that for me, it was really nice to know that I could come into this bond committee having, I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no, I just want to learn. And that was really, I felt like a lot of the people that were in this room when we had met each of these times, that was kind of the overall flavor, is people just came with an open mind. We went through a really great process that started at a very macro level, and we really whittled down to what makes Lovejoy Lovejoy. So the members that were comprised of this group, included parents, grandparents, students, which I'll talk about in a moment, but business leaders. And some of the business leaders that we have that make up our community were in finance, architecture. We had an attorney or two. We had financial advisors. We had people that work in PR. We had people that are communicators. We had teachers, principals, administrators. And what, for me, as someone who's fairly new to this community and really wants to be a part of that woven fabric that many of you have been a part of for many years, and some 6 weeks, welcome, was that I just felt like it was such a great opportunity to meet a wide range of people with a wide range of interests, people of all walks of life, different parts of our community. And the other thing, too, is a wide range of stages in life. If you'll go to the next slide, I'm really excited about this slide because we had student voices. And I feel like there were moments where some of the questions that were asked in the room, I thought, oh, that was a really good question from some of our students. I think it was just such a special opportunity. So I personally thank these student voices who spoke. We had representatives that were involved in fine arts, robotics, in STEM, part of the STEM Fest. And we had a student who, gosh, so special young man who wants to be involved in public policy and education. And guess what? His career started pretty much when this bond committee started. So I was just really blown away. But what I love most about having our student voices here is really this culture in Lovejoy, which is all students, we're all part of one body. And as parents, we're a part of the student body. As grandparents, as neighbors, as friends, people who maybe don't even have children, it's all still very Lovejoy focused. And so to me, when my kindergartner, who's now a second grader, the first day of school, when we had high school students, and throughout the year, when high school students show up on campus or they're reading to the kids, and my little kindergartner was walking up and looking at these giant high school students who were in their athletic, I think it was the football team. I remember writing an email to the coach of the football team and just said, man, it was really neat to see these young men representing our community and showing my little kindergartner with a little backpack that's like half his size, and letting him see kind of what this legacy is and what his path holds for him in the future. So these were the voices that were a part of our bond committee. I also love the fact that we have this idea of older students being a mentor and a role model for our younger students. So if we go to the next slide, here's some of the names of some of the people that spent a lot of time together. These are the many voices who listened, who evaluated, who considered the voices of community members that were not there. I really want to stress that. We had a lot of people who were also taking into account the future leopards. They're not in Lovejoy schools just yet. While mine's in LCDC and will be a kindergartner soon, we're real excited about that. But taking into consideration of what her high school year will look like and what the campuses will look like. And so knowing that we had voices here that represented robotics, orchestra, wrestling, special education, GT, human resources, we had alumni, we had parents, and we had grandparents, and we had family members. And then I also want to take a special note at the bottom. We had our table facilitators. If you go to the next slide, our table facilitators were there as non-voting members. They helped us keep that process fair and moving forward, and I really appreciated their time. So here's a look at some of the folks and the time that they invested in being able to present this to you tonight.
Thank you, Pamela. I want to take you through the process that we, in the second phase, went through, because this is where the rubber meets the road for us and where we really got into it. And I like the planning process. It gave us a chance to meet and then rest on it, think about it, come back to the next meeting. And so in 6 meetings, scattered over 4 months, we had a chance to really digest what we were hearing and learning. And so there was a good cross-section, as Pamela has said, of folks from all over the community, in all walks of life, some of us old people, some of us young people. Well, those high schoolers were fantastic, and I was just tickled to death to see them on our committee, and it really worked out really well. But let me take you through this process, because this is what we're going to sell to the townsfolk, is that this wasn't a half-baked idea that we put together and we recommended to the school board, and hopefully you folks back us, because it is something that we need in this community. But we were able to understand it through this very thorough process. First meeting, we went through the process, the whole timeline, the vision, and the end goal of what we were trying to accomplish. And the very first thing they said to us was, make this compatible with your faculty and your students. Make it a good thing for them. And so that was one of the primary things that we had to keep in mind as we developed the plans. Meeting 2, demographic report, and we spent a whole evening just going through the demographics of the community. How many lots are still for sale here? What's the average price of a home? Where is the population bulged? What's the latest thing that's gone on in the community? Where are our schools located? Where is the relative use of our facility? So we went through all of that in that demographics report and studying that. Came back in meeting 3, which was a bus trip. We got a chance to get a bumpy ride on a bus. And it was fun. I had forgotten what it was like to ride a bus, because it's been a long time since high school. But it was a lot of fun, and we got a chance to see a very tired bus barn. Bought as a horse barn, converted into a bus barn, and it's still a barn, but it's a little bit past its time, I would say. They had a statement. Kyle had a statement in the meeting, something about past the end of life or something. I can't remember quite what it was, but it certainly said that there was room for improvement there, and we took action on that, and that's a part of what you'll see in what we recommended. Meeting 4 was the project priority presentation, and what we had to do then was we had to take all these needs that we have discovered, and we had to put them into some kind of priority. What's the most important thing that's going to happen, and where do we need to fit this all together? Meeting 5 was financial, and we got a full dose of all of the backshop financials to put together into our thinking and understand how we were going to afford this. How does it all fit together, which you're going to hear shortly. Meeting 6, we wrapped up with final, very important presentation of the data that created the bond package. We had the whole bond package laid before us, and we set it together. Now, it hasn't been set up into Proposal A, Proposal B, Proposal C. That's to come. But we got through those 6 sessions over, like I say, over a 4-month span, and we had a great time together. We were assembled in tables of 5 to 8 people. We had a chance to get to know each other, to talk it out. And I think the thing that I liked about this kind of an ad hoc type of committee, we came into it with a purpose. We had a start date and a stop date, and I tell you, folks tend to really dig in on this kind of thing because they know that there is an end time to their service, and they can really think this through, and they want to make a contribution. And I think the more we worked on it through 6 separate meetings, we found that we were really getting into this. I mean, we wanted to see some material production to come out of this. And so I think that's what we're presenting to you tonight, is an opportunity for us to put something on the table for the townsfolk that makes sense, it's saleable. And remember, I've been in sales all my life, but I can sell this. This is something that I believe every townsperson will recognize a need and want to see us stay strong. Here are our recommendations. And I'm just going to cover these, the general part of this, and then we're going to go back and take each of these apart. Hart Elementary renovation is a package of $35,700,000 to do what's needed to be done there. Lovejoy High School renovation is $123 million. Maintenance transportation facility is a complete rebuild of that operation. We're going to take that one down and put up a real barn, one that really fits buses. And it's a package that is $13,184,000. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing repairs and replacement fit into all of our schools, and that's a $55,856,000 piece, line item of this recommendation. And we're going to go through those MEPs. Site paving and repairs of $15,881, and that's not all the paving. That's the paving that is outside of the renovated schools and renovated facilities, the top 3 line items. Landscaping and irrigation upgrades and repairs, another $2,893 that goes into the facilities that aren't mentioned in the renovations. Food service repairs and replacements, another $3,899. Roofing repairs and replacements, $7,307. Upgrade sewer system for Hart Elementary is $1,054.40. And then the tennis at Willow Springs, the tennis backstop, and Lovejoy High School track and tennis facilities needs resurfacing. There are some holes already in several lanes at the high school that need to be fixed. And the thing that we recognized was that we will lose meet events if we let the track go down any further, because we just won't run on it. So those are the things that were plugged into that. Wrestling edition at Lovejoy High School. We had a choice of whether we would remodel something or whether we would build something, and we made the choice that it was more prudent if we would build this addition onto the high school because of logistics of the personnel that are using it, what we can do with the space, and we can do it more efficiently by going to the high school with it. Intercom emergency responder and security systems, $6,175. Two-way radio communication system, classroom lock sets, security fencing. Most of these items are all items of security and security and service for the schools. We've got a lot of outdated lock sets, and we've got need for two-way radio. We need to get on the same communication systems in the schools, and that's what this is about. Replacement life of cycles of the buses and upgraded vehicle maintenance equipment, $1,920. Devices, infrastructure and software, $8,634. And technology refresh for LCDC, Puster, and the other schools, $4,984. These are the line items, and now we want to get into the details of those and go through them. So, next up, you're going to do that one? Okay, you're going to take that.
Thank you so much, Gene. The committee, we didn't take it lightly. 276 million, that's a big number. But, you know, we just went over how much time and effort was put into this. And as you start to review those numbers, and Kyle and the architect and Dr. Lizzie Johnson also did a great job of moderating this whole thing and keeping us on task and getting us through all 6 of those meetings. Just like Gene talked about, they were, you know, we wanted to be, everybody's time is very valuable. 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever it is, we needed to make sure we hit all our schedules. And she did a great job of making sure we moved along and got to that final vote. But we didn't take that lightly. And, you know, the team, we kept pressing back and asking for more information. And Kyle and his team would get that to us. So we've kind of got a scope and schedule here of some of the major projects: Hart Elementary, Lovejoy High School, and the maintenance and transportation facility. And I'll let Kyle speak a little bit to the timeline and what goes into that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So this is a really good way to illustrate what a major project would look like. Again, this is an example of scope and schedule, but there are a couple things that you want to really lift out of this depiction. First is you're going to see, it's probably hard to see on the screen, but there's a line on there that says escalation. And so escalation runs from the time that numbers were actually generated, which you'll see that happened in November. And it escalates all the way out through the beginning of the bidding and procurement phase of that project. And so the reason for the escalation is obvious, which is inflation, so cost of materials and labor over time. And so you'll see these projects, if there were a bond election in May, and if it were successful, the work would not start in June. So these projects are escalated out. And the reason that they're escalated out is because there's a process before we can get to the construction component. And so you'll see an ed specs part on there. And so what that looks like is engaging with our educators, our administrators, and really making sure that we come up with concepts and designs that will be considered during the design phase, and that these are all aligned with best practices for teaching and learning, that they're aligned with our strategic plan, and that those are woven into the design phase of each of these projects. You'll notice that Hart, due to the scope of that project being a major renovation, there's 2 summers that are involved there or proposed, and you'll see that articulated by the 2 red boxes. There'll probably be a major portion that would be done one summer, and then the rest of the site work would be done that following summer. If you look at Lovejoy High School, you'll see nonstop construction. So if we tried to utilize summers only on something on a project that large, it would take many, many summers, and it would be ongoing for a long time. We would have to escalate that out even further. So that would be ongoing. And then you'll see the construction or rebuild of the maintenance and transportation facility, the way that it's articulated. And so Gene did a really really great job of going through and talking about some numbers, but what we want to do is take a walk through each of our facilities. The recommendation that the committee brought forward actually impacts every facility that we have district-wide, which means it will impact every child that we have district-wide, not only in the current, but in the future. And so these guys and gals did a remarkable job of leaning into quite a task. And so I'm very thankful for their work. They were committed to the process, they were committed to each other, and it was pretty remarkable. It wasn't always easy, but it wasn't supposed to be. And so we're definitely thankful for them. So if you look at Lovejoy High School, the recommendation from the committee is a major architectural renovation. And so what that looks like at the high school would be to have the opportunity to look at space utilization the way it was designed back in 2004, 2005, and constructed in 2006. And if there's anything that needs to change. And so that could look like creating different spaces within the high school. It could look like moving walls within the high school. That's new doors, that's new windows, ceilings, shelving, casework, display boards on the walls. And so that is a complete and total renovation. And then if you look at the next few items, so your furniture and fixture, that's all your classroom furniture, library furniture, cafeteria, and I'm not going to read every single bullet. Your MEP systems, Jean mentioned that. So you're talking about all of your HVAC, your plumbing systems, electrical. This includes LED lighting, both interior and exterior. And so with these MEP upgrades comes efficiency. And so with the efficiency upgrades come cost savings to the district on the utility side. Site paving, again, this is not a complete repave of the entire site, but if you've been to the high school, you know there's some opportunity there to do some patchwork and make things much better by way of our site and paving. Landscape and irrigation, the same thing. That helps us keep the integrity of our site paving. Roofing, it would be a total roof replacement over at the high school. Food service repairs and replacement, those are all going to be included in that recommendation by the committee. You'll see the technology items that are included there. Safety and security items, which for this campus would include some security fencing. That security fencing would be located out there in the commons area, which is highly utilized during the instructional part of the day when the weather's nice. But there's some opportunity there for us to make that area a little bit more secure during the day. And then I really want to highlight over on that right-hand side, if you're following along the presentation, a major renovation would include impacts to fine arts and CTE areas. That would include the auditorium area, fine arts instructional spaces, and then also the CTE classroom and lab areas. Additionally, there would be impacts that Jean had mentioned earlier with the addition of a wrestling practice gym that would be attached to the campus. That's part of the recommendation. Resurfacing of the tennis courts. That's all original surface over there. Those have never been resurfaced. Windscreens at both the tennis and over at baseball, softball, and Leopard Stadium. Windscreen replacement there. Softball field video and sound upgrades. And then concession stand roofs and equipment where those are at end of life. So you can see the committee did a lot of work on Lovejoy High School. There was a lot of thought put into that. There are many aspects that went into that process that they mentioned, and you can see those items there. If we shift over to Hart, so Hart's the other total renovation. Again, there's opportunity there for us to look at space utilization and looking at how to make that space more closely align with the goals that are in our strategic plan, where we talk about collaborative learning and movement. A couple of the major differences here, you're going to see the same aspects and the same areas that are touched with the furniture and the fixtures and the MEP site paving. But a couple things I want to lift up here. One was already mentioned earlier, and that was the transition from a septic system that is now 25 years of age over to a sewer solution. The other one would be increase or redesign of the circulation there in and around Hart. And so you guys are well aware of the challenges over there along Estelle and Country Club. And so this renovation does include recirculation, redesign of that whole area, which will help with both the flow and parking. And then lastly, I want to talk about the playground because this is unique to Hart. This would be upgrading playground equipment. This would also include a shade structure over the playground and then synthetic fall protection in lieu of the wood chips that we currently utilize there at that location. Transportation and maintenance, also known as the bus barn and maintenance area. So again, this is a complete demo of this site and a rebuild. And so the committee said, we need to design a facility for how we use for transportation, right? Not for cabinet building, but we need to have something that's specific to transportation, something that's specific to maintenance and grounds. And so that was the recommendation by the committee. And so that would be a complete redesign there on that 3.3 acre lot. Again, you'll see most of those are standard that we've already gone through, but I do want to lift up a couple of items. You'll see under safety and security, there's a rider safety, it says rider safety equipment. What that looks like is technology that allows us to know who's on the bus at every moment, when they got on, when they got off, if they got on, if they got off. And so it really helps us be more specific and know exactly at any given moment who's on our school bus.
Hey, Kyle?
Yes, sir.
Would that be accessible to the parents in your thought in terms of, I know you haven't designed it, but would that be your thought?
So there are solutions out there that offer a parent app where you can see not who's on the bus, but you can see as the bus approaches your assigned stop, and it kind of gives you a countdown, lets you know the bus is 2 minutes away or whatever threshold you set, so that you have a better idea of, when to have your kiddo at the bus in the AM or when you need to meet your kiddo at the bus stop in the afternoon, depending on what solution. There are another one that we talked about a little bit earlier was the two-way radio system. And so our buses currently have a standalone system that only talk bus to bus and only talk to the transportation facility. The recommendation of the committee is to have a district-wide integration where our two-way handhelds at the campuses not only talk campus to campus like they currently do, but also talk to transportation. So if I'm an administrator and I need to convey or have a conversation with a bus that just left my campus and maybe we left a kid, I can get on the radio and I can reach out to the bus. Or if we're doing a total site evacuation, I can coordinate with my drivers much easier and I don't have to run everything through dispatch. And then you'll see fleet and fleet maintenance. That's life cycle fleet replacement for our fleet, and then vehicle maintenance equipment. And Puster. So here's an opportunity where the committee said, we don't feel like Puster is in need of a total renovation. And so what they said is we want to take care of the main systems, and we want to take care of Puster, and we want to put them on our cycle for all of the things, right? The lighting, the MEP, site paving, landscape. But we don't feel like it's in need yet of a major renovation. And so you'll see all of the areas that are included in their recommendation, including roof replacement. And so each of those areas are very similar to what you saw in the total renovation, but you're not going to have the space is not going to change within the footprint. You're not going to have redesign of space. You're not going to have new doors, new walls, new windows. And so it's not as dramatic, but all of the major systems are being touched so that we put it on track with those areas that are end of life. Sloan Creek, very similar. The committee said we don't feel like Sloan Creek's ready for a major renovation, but we do have some areas of need that we need to take care of. And so the recommendation there looks very similar to that of Puster, with the exception of the roofing. So the assessment that was done there does not call for a new roof. That roof is in good shape, but it does need some safety railing up at the top of the roof hatch. And so you'll see that's a little bit of a difference. And then this one does get security fencing too. If you've been over to Sloan Creek, you'll know that there's a courtyard area that's utilized by students and staff. And so we need to have a way to better secure that area during the day where someone can't just walk up unnoticed. And so that was another recommendation by the committee. Willow Springs, very similar. You'll see that major systems that when they're approaching end of life, they're included in the scope of the work that's recommended by the committee. And you'll see that tennis court backstop replacement down there, that's unique to that campus. And I'll just say, the committee did want to make sure that all of our safety and security items across the district at all of our campuses are all updated. Our phones are all updated. Our life safety systems are all part of their recommendation at every campus and updated. It's not really laid out that way, but I feel like that's important. It was something that was very important to them. Lovejoy Child Development Center, again, this campus has seen some renovation in its day, but there are items that are in need of attention. And so again, you'll see a lot of the similarities from some of our other campuses with major systems, with site paving, with landscape and irrigation. And you'll see on the roofing for this one, it doesn't call for a complete replacement, but it needs some help. And so a roof restoration is something where they actually would come in and look at doing a reseal of the membrane and add some more grit back down and really making sure that we're in good shape moving forward. But there's still enough life left on the roof where the recommendation was to do a restoration and not a full replacement. The administration building, you'll see that, again, this is not a renovation. One of the things that you'll notice on this from a safety and security standpoint, all campuses, I left this out, are all up for camera upgrades for those that are end of life. So that's extremely important for safety and security, but also for asset protection and making sure that we're taking care of our assets and we know who's coming and going after hours. And that was a really something, again, that the committee wanted to make sure was highlighted. There's also some data center upgrades that would happen at the administration building where we have a lot of our data funnels through this building from our campuses. And so there'd be some data center upgrades there along with network infrastructure. And then I'll say last, but I'm not going to say least. This is kind of one of those things that we joke around a little bit about the auditorium. Is it an auditorium? Is it a pool bubble? No, it's an auditorium. But the auditorium needs some work, and says the committee. And so this was a recommendation that the committee said, hey, we need to replace bubble fabric. The bubble fabric has many seam failures that have happened over the past 3 years. It's not that old. It was erected in 2017. But we do have failures. The pull liner replacement needs to happen. Restroom fixtures in there, those need to be upgraded. And probably the biggest culprit for all of that is just the harsh environment that happens inside of an auditorium with the chemicals from the pool. And so there's also, they put in there the need for a water quality monitoring so that can be done remotely, where you don't have to physically go out every time and do the manual testing. So again, that all goes back to the health and safety of our kiddos. And so they wanted to make sure that those items were included. I do want to point out, it's in the slides, but every single facility, so whether it be a K-12 or the learning LCDC or this building, the admin building, everything is up for a fire alarm and fire protection upgrade. And so they thought that was really important and wanted to make sure that we took care across the district and we standardized that equipment. Okay, so that was a lot of information really fast, but we're going to keep moving on, and we're going to go into a little bit of historical bonds. Henri?
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate your help there. I'm glad I didn't have to go through that. That was a lot. That was a lot. But the committee did, and Kyle did a great job of continuing to give us information so that we could see what was going to be done. Because as you can see, that kind of goes into our historical bonds since 2003. Light numbers compared to what we're offering right now, what we're recommending, 61, 78, and 75. And in that, we built a high school, we built Puster, Willow Springs, Sloan Creek. Anything else? Am I missing natatorium at some point we built in that? All those items are in that. So to think that where we are now, we do. Inflation, all those different cost of construction has gone up over time. But the committee thought about it, and they thought about like, what's our crown jewel? The high school is a crown jewel. So that is very, very important. And, you know, to all of our kids, we all want them to graduate high school here, and we want them to be number one. We want to be a top high school. So we look at that, but we haven't had a bond since 2014. So it's much needed for us to do these repairs. When you start looking at what goes into our school and the facilities, it's very important that our kids that we send to the school district basically have, and our teachers and our staff, they have those facilities. All right. So how are we going to fund it? School board, I'm sure you know this. There's M&O and INS. If we're not able to fund it from INS, which is the bond, then some of these much-needed repairs will come out of the M&O, which is a problem. We don't want to be coming out of the M&O to fix the roof on any of these schools. INS, that's where the money's going to come from. Thomas can speak a little bit to how that works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Henri. So basically, school districts are, so when we talk about the M&O and INS, and we have shared this many times during budget workshops, but just to share again, school districts throughout the state of Texas are required to develop budgets that are broken down into two components. So the boards are adopting a budget and a tax rate. And those two parts are, as Henri mentioned, the M&O, which is maintenance and operations, and INS, which is interest and sinking. So each one of these buckets have a specific type of expenses that we can fund, use the dollars and fund. So when we think about the M&O side, we can only fund the day-to-day operations of the district. So that's going to be our staffing cost, our fuel cost for transportation. It's going to be our electricity. It's going to be the day-to-day operations, supplies and materials and things of that nature. Now, the only mechanism that the district has, and all districts throughout the state of Texas have, in order to address capital replacement and maintenance is through INS, which districts use to fund the principal and interest on the bonds that are issued.
And we have our historical tax rate, which is down to the lowest it's been in 15 years. So the M&O is at 1.2552, and the INS is at 0.5. So this is, this is a great community, great district. When you look at where we're at, and I've been lucky enough to follow sports teams, go to other facilities, other school districts, we are lacking in our facilities when you go into other places. Not even the brand new ones. The brand new ones that some of these school districts are building are excellent. But what we have compared to even existing school districts that have renovated, we are lacking, and that affects our home values. If people don't want to come here, if they don't feel comfortable when they come and do a tour of our facilities, they're going to choose somewhere else versus here, and they're not going to pay to come into this school district for this excellent education. With this, there's no impact to the tax rate. With the bond or without the bond, our INS is still at 0.5. There's really no reason not to invest back into the school district with that money that we get from the INS in Thomas can talk a little bit too, how we can afford it, because that's the big part, right?
Yep, no, absolutely. Henri, thank you very much. And before I dive into the bonding capacity, the district's bonding capacity, I want to echo some of the words that were shared by Superintendent Cordell and Mr. Percival here, and extend my gratitude for all the hard work that the Bond Planning Committee put into this. And it was an honor for me to have witnessed this process. This was the first time I've been part of such an amazing process, and I'm very thankful for all the hard work that was put into this. And I hope that, they learned as much from me about school finance that I learned from them about, this overall process. And it really came through, and I really witnessed and saw the love that they have not only for the district, but for the community as a whole. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done to put together this recommendation. Back in the January, during the January board meeting, we did have, and during meeting 5, we did have our financial advisor, Mr. Witt from Samco, come and present on 2 different scenarios as it relates to bonding capacity. So there are different assumptions that were made in those scenarios that gave us those 2 different numbers for scenario 1 and scenario 2. This time around, what we did is we were able to really look at the recommendation that the committee had put together and identify and make some changes to our assumptions. So when we're looking at the assumptions, we're still looking at 3 different installments of issuing the bonds, but the issuance dates are changing a little bit. We're doing it every 18 months. Dollar amounts are probably about the same as what you saw in that scenario 2 back in January. But the big thing that we're able to do is to look at the different capital items and look at the useful life and really identify the amortization length. So we took each of those installments and then we broke it down into 3 different phases. So that way we're not funding technology devices over a 30-year period. We're really looking at it and saying we want to amortize that over the useful life of 3 years, but then looking at the other MEP items that would probably only have a 15-year life versus a complete renovation that would have a 30-year life. So we really broke that down in developing the amortization schedule for that. The other big change that was made from what you saw previously was that we used a 4.35% interest rate. In this assumption, we're bumping that up to a 4.5. But then we also are changing the assumption around our taxable value growth in our community. So we initially did a 4-year, $200 million per year. And this assumption, we're looking at extending that from 4 to 6 years at $200 million. Mr. Witt previously showed kind of the fluctuation in the property values over time. We had 1 year was only a $90 million increase, but then we had another year that was $500,000. So we feel like $500 million increase. So we feel this is a pretty conservative approach of the $200 million for over the next 6 years. So when we look at the bond program analysis, you can see here, it's a little small, but hopefully you can kind of see what we're trying to illustrate here. So the black bars there at the very bottom, that's our current outstanding debt service, annual debt service. And then now we're layering on top of that the different installments. So we're looking at the first installment. You can see how we've broken out based on the first installment, second installment, and third installment for technology. We're only amortizing that over 3 years. But then you see the second installment for facilities and capital, where we're amortizing that over 15 to 30 years. So based off of those assumptions, we have the district has a bonding capacity. So taking all the projects with the estimated assumed cost presented in the package, the district has bonding capacity of $276.5 million, and doing it in 3 installments, 18 months apart. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to the committee.
Finally, the Lovejoy ISD Bond Planning Committee recommends that the Lovejoy ISD Board of Trustees call a bond election for May 3rd, 2025. That's it.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Board, this is an opportunity for you guys to ask questions and talk to the committee and the administration about whatever you'd like to ask.
I'll go first. I have a preliminary question about the process when you all have come to the conclusion of these items. So we look at, there's a large committee, 40-plus members, is that what we established? So how did you all come to the conclusion with 40 people, these items? Can you explain to me a little bit more about that process?
I had the great pleasure of having somebody at our table who's actually in this room. Oh, right, I forgot, I'm short, sorry. I had the great pleasure of our table. We had a really great process. We had a list of all of the different items, and Donnie, who is at our table, basically said, okay, first, before we do anything, can we afford it? You see the number we're trying to shoot for, all the things that you think are important, add it up. Sat there and added up. Thanks, Donnie. And we had to make hard decisions that were based on what we wanted. And some of the discussions that we had were, you know, why, out of all the people at the table, how many of you here vote yes for this? Great. How many vote no? And then what we basically had was, okay, no's, talk to us. What's your no? Why? And then as soon as those answers were shared, then the question was, okay, yeses, did that change your mind? No, it didn't. And if we had a majority of people at the table, then we move forward with saying, yes, our recommendation is that particular item. And what was really great, and I kind of stressed this earlier, was there were some people that made votes that they said, I personally, my child would benefit from this particular item, but I can't vote for this because I don't know that the rest of the community shares my same views on this. And we had some really great, healthy discussions that way. And then I was spending my money like left and right too early in the system, and we got down to some safety measures. Sorry, Casey. And I couldn't afford it. I had to say no. But thankfully, as a group, that one particular thing that I couldn't afford was vetoed, and something else that I was interested in, we ended up balancing out and saying no to some things and yes to others. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Did I say it right, Donnie? We get it? Okay. Some table mates in here.
So,
Thank you. I didn't start with that either. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for all of your time, to everybody who invested in this, your passion and your care for kids and students and staff. It's evident that your passion was behind this project, and we're grateful for all of your time.
so I think you hit on this, but if you could expand on and help me understand more of the development of, we have these recommendations, the development of the need for the items, and how consensus and how you feel about the confidence of the recommendations being made based on that development of the need versus the want and those types of things. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, Gene's going to follow me. That's good. So first off, we're not going out in determining, okay, the high school needs repairs. This starts long before we came together as a committee. So the school district got together and they did an assessment, and they did several assessments of our facilities before it even got to the capital strategic planning, before it even got to the bond committee. And then as we got to the bond committee, the information was presented to us. We were in, forget how many tables we were separated into, but as she talked about the voting, it's a table vote, right? And it's the majority of those table votes is whether we're recommending that today or not. So you've got to have the certain number of table votes. So that's how you get the community to kind of interact and figure out as we're voting. But that information is presented to us, and then we did do the bus tours. We went and visited these facilities to actually see what the needs are, right? We're not just saying, hey, we feel that we have a problem at the natatorium. We went out and visited in a thunderstorm, Katie, the natatorium with no lights. So we risked our lives. But we went out and visited these things and walked through, and things you wouldn't even think about. We actually got to go see, and it was just like the food service line where you were like, I don't know, they serve food, it would be good. But you go and see some of these end-of-life issues that are happening in that, and how it can then affect what our dollars, because if we don't have a bond and we can't pay for it out of the right side of the bucket, then we have an issue. I believe and this is getting into, we don't want to have to come out of the M&O, right? That's going to have an issue with what we are able to provide in our teaching and programs. We want to come out of the INS side. So the information presented to us in the bond committee was all in. We had pretty amazing participation from week to week as we went and did these meetings. So it was all in by the people that agreed to do this, and it was very well done. And we had the architect, VLK was here with us the whole time, so they were able to do that part of that assessment and provide part of this data as we went forward. I'll let Gene talk a little bit.
Well, I think the thing that was impressed on me was the format that we got together around 9 tables. There was never more than 9 of us at any given table. In fact, I think it was probably 8. But when we sat and talked about these things, it was real small group ministry sitting there. I mean, you had an opportunity to see, and hear from 7 other members of your committee and people that you'd been living with week after week. We didn't change teams. And as we went through these, the yeses and nos were explained. We had plenty of time to sit there and talk through, why am I saying, let's do this, and somebody else is saying, I can't support that. I just can't get there. It's a little bit like what Congress needs to do, crossing the aisle. That's what we were doing. The yeses and the nos had equal say, and we had a chance to really talk it through. And then to prioritize it, to your point, we had to decide, we got down to the numbers, and as Pamela said, you run out of money pretty quick when you put it all down. But all the time, yeah, just like at home. So what we were doing was sitting there and saying, okay, we got to have HVACs. I mean, that's a given. We want a roof on the place. We don't want our kids getting wet. So you got that to deal with. But then, you get down to, do we put in new furniture? Do we do this? Do we do that? And so we had to do a lot of prioritizing. And so that was a big piece of how we fit it together, and then came up with those 2 pages of numbers on what are we going to recommend to you folks that makes sense to us and a cross-section of us, the community, because we had folks from everywhere. I mean, I don't know that I met any rocket scientists or brain surgeons, but I met some pretty influential folks around those tables. We had a good chance to really talk it out and come to something that we were proud to come here tonight and tell you that you ought to support, and let's go. May 3rd, let's get out there and sell it. So, or sell it before May 3rd, but let's win May 3rd.
Do you feel that you got all your questions answered in this process? I know it was 6 meetings, a lot of opportunity, but do you feel that you had enough time to get your questions answered?
I think we had enough time to get enough answered to be able to stand here tonight confident that we've put a pretty good recommendation together. I mean, I'm proud to present it, and this is my 4th bond committee that I've served on in communities, and I feel like this is as strong as we could do it if we sat and chewed on it another 6 months. I think we've got the answers, and I think we've got something that is palatable to the community and believable. That's where I'm coming from.
So, Henri, you alluded to the capital assessment or the capital planning assessments that were done by engineers and architects. So you were able to, as a committee, discern through those recommendations, and then you guys were able to deliberate and come to consensus together around those particular things, not only listening to what they say, but you were able to go out and see these things firsthand?
Yes, sir. I mean, we were able to go out and visually see these. I did it on multiple occasions because I did do the capital strategic planning. And then I really did have to think, do I want to be on the bond planning committee? Because it's not like, hey, if you can make it to 1 or 2, you're okay. you have to be all in if you're going to be on this. And these people that decided to do it, they were all in, right, on the bond committee. Because you can't make a consensus if you haven't been there and, like somebody mentioned, I think, asked the questions. And there was a lot of questions that were asked, and then there was information that came back to us. And so when we look at what needs to be done to our facilities, it's not like we're trying to come out here and say, we need to rebuild Lovejoy High School, or we need to rebuild Hart. There was a discussion over, do we just rebuild Hart instead of trying to renovate it? But we didn't think that was appropriate. We thought we could make it, we can make it where it needs to be by just renovating it.
The committee was able to think independently
We
and
were able to-
apply.
Yes, we have a lot of information, yes.
And this time I remembered I was short. I did want to add one other thing, was there were several of us in the room that were fairly new. And so that was really a great experience too, because there was that institutional historical knowledge of the community, things in the past that have been hot ticket items, hotly debated, things that, ooh, we shouldn't touch that, that's a hot potato. And there were a couple of people, myself included, who said, why is that a hot potato? And to have the discussion where people could say, well, this is the thought process, and to know that people that weren't in the room and what they've said vocally at other board meetings, in I guess even with teacher conversations, it was all considered. And that was really nice to be able to learn that knowledge from other people and have the concern about, oh, maybe we really need to think this through. Or when we put together the communications plan, we really have to stress how important, that some of the items that are on the list actually impact other items on the list. For instance, traffic driving down Country Club Road, to me, that's a really big issue. And knowing that a decision that we made about what we plan to do for Hart from, septic versus sewer actually impacts traffic, which most people wouldn't put those two things together. And to me, that was really interesting to learn that holistic approach to learning community-wise what's important that maybe I wouldn't know of because I wasn't here, 4 years ago, but also seeing how those different things impact one another.
Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I know that's probably not easy to stand up there, but we appreciate it. Really good information. I had made a list of questions, and you've answered most of them, actually. Although I wanted to know, who was on the committee and if it represented a cross-section of the community, so I appreciate you going through that. I wanted to know how many meetings did you have, and so I appreciate that you walked through what you discussed at each of those. And so let me also add my thanks for how many hours you clearly spent going through this. I wanted to ask if you actually toured the facility and looked at the individual. I participated on that, so I can say thank you for that. So I guess another question would just be, were there other recommendations or needs that were put forth by the administration that the committee chose not to pursue as part of this recommendation?
You want me to talk to it? Well, Jean and I were at the table together, and meeting number 5, you do your sample vote, right? You're like, hey, what are we going to vote yes for? So Jean and I got down and we're like, this is good, this is good, this is good. I think we were about 50 million over this number. So we had a whole nother list of items that we felt could be done, right? So there were things, but then that was what was great. We had that discussion amongst the table, and we were able to, be like, okay, what really needs to be done? And the way that they did the process, to where you really thought about it and you got the information along the way, where you had the data, then you could go back and ask questions about, like, it's sticker shock to see these numbers, right? That's my thing. But then the question is, how do we pay for it? There's no increase to your tax rate, right? As a homeowner, I want to know, well, what does this do to me, right? How do we make our schools excellent, or continue to make them excellent? How do we make that a safe place? How do we make the buses a safe place, right? Like, when you start hearing things like that, that if somebody gets on the wrong bus, they have to cell phone call the bus driver, which means the bus driver has to pull out a cell phone, and, like, do we all want that to happen? Not really, right? So that's a simple thing, but when you start hearing about the way they're working things like that, you're like, some of these things just need to happen, right? And we can't do them because we have to do a bond to do these things. So it was very back and forth, and there was a lot of information. And, there's a lot that needs to be done, but we did do a good discussion to get it to where we felt is comfortable.
Remember, a while ago, I said that we had a think time between meetings. we had a chance to go back and take a lot of the things that we had realized were going to cost more than we could afford. But we sat down and took some of those things and put them on paper individually. I mean, not mob psychology, but individually, we would sit down and take those things and look at what's the asset value of this, and how many pluses do we get for doing this? If we put this in place, how far will this reach into the years ahead of us? Because we can't run a bond issue every year. So we're going to have to see how far can we stretch this. And so we took a lot of those items like that, and we had a half a dozen items fall out of our original list. We decided not to present stuff that we're not recommending. We wanted to present to you what we are recommending. So that's why you didn't see the fallout.
And if I can say one more thing, because I'm being chatty, I'd like to answer the opposite of that question. So one of the things that we did prioritize was the bus barn. Having gone and seen what our bus drivers, you're smiling, so you know where I'm going. Knowing that we have bus drivers who take care of our most precious asset, our children, and they don't have a decent bathroom. If I was going to be a bus driver, I know we're hiring. If I really thought about it and I walked on site, would that building be a place, man, I could work here? This would be great. My job driving the kids, absolutely. But there was a lot of love put into that prioritization of what those top level items were too. So the opposite of your question was there's a lot of love and there was a lot of hurt too, and we had to cut some things.
So, technical questions about the process, just so I understand, it's clear to the community, all those things. When you do these votes, it's the citizens voting on this, or the citizens and the admin?
It's just the citizens, the admin, the table moderators, all they can do is just ask you questions and answer any questions, but they cannot vote. So it's.
The recommendations coming forward were
It's from the
deliberated and
citizens,
voted on
yes,
by
it's-
our taxpayers and our citizens.
It's from the citizens that are on the bond committee.
That's a majority, a two-thirds majority? How does that?
It's got to be a majority. It's a table vote. So the table votes, and if your table isn't a majority, then you're voting yes for that. And then you take all the table votes together and they're put up there, and if you're a majority, then that is going forward with that.
A lot of my questions have been answered as well, but I just have a few. Well, first, I'd like to start off with expressions of gratitude to those of you that served both on the Strategic Capital Planning Committee and the Bond Planning Committee. I know those were long hours, and I know this was dense material and a lot of questions that had to be answered in a very extensive process. So you have my gratitude for your participation and your enthusiasm in bringing this recommendation forward tonight. One of the things that I've seen, or that I see as part of the presentation is, and I want to make sure you felt that the committee had the accurate information. We talked a little bit about the history of the bonds in Lovejoy. Did you feel like you had appropriate information regarding escalation and the impact of inflation in your recommendations? Because as we understand, we're not talking about $2003, $2007, $2014 even. We're talking about $2025 to $2028. So my question is did you feel like cost increases and contingencies in addition to inflation and those escalations were appropriately considered and that you appropriately were provided reasonable information on those items?
I came away from our discussions on that feeling that the projections had been extremely conservative. In fact, I felt pretty buoyed by the idea that we've got escalation calculated in here that ought to get us through. And I just don't think that I just have a hard time believing that we didn't pack enough escalation into the package. And I know our financial folks spent some time convincing us, because we weren't all so totally convinced about that. But we talked it through, and I came away personally feeling like, yes, it's a very conservative number that was plugged in, very conservative.
Thank you for that. And I have a question, maybe you'd like to answer it first too, because you've been involved in some of these processes. It's more of a high-level question. And that is, did you feel like there was integrity to this process, that you, the committee, were allowed to go where the information in your deliberations took you?
Yes. I haven't had the pleasure of serving on a committee that was facilitated by Dr. Lizzie, but I thought the process was a success in that you had to be asleep. Now, some of these sessions were long sessions, but you had to be asleep if you missed the real nut of the night, 6 nights going. And yes, I think we did. We had good information. It was well spelled out, and I thought at the end of the day, we came away being able to put together this recommendation with confidence.
I was going to answer your question too. Can you go to the scope and example? Because if you look at the escalation that you talked about, the escalation, nothing gets locked in until you hit the bid, right? So once the bond's passed, once we start saying, okay, now we're in our design, it's not until you're finished the design and you go out for the bid, correct, Kyle?
That's correct.
So it's a long time frame. Even if you look at the Hart Elementary, you're talking about October of 26 before you're locking in these numbers. So that escalation, and if you look into it, as far as you get into the numbers of how much that escalation is, it gets scary if you escalate it out even further, right? If you say, okay, we're not going to do anything now, we're going to do something 5 years from now. So it was projected in there, and I feel confident in those numbers, and it just makes it even more important to act sooner and not say we can get this done later.
And then I'll say something again. I feel with confidence if you were to go through this process one more time. We're just not sure. Let's find a whole other slice of this community, bring people together. And if you'll go back to the slide where Lovejoy High School and the dollar amount is, I would be very surprised if another group got together and had to put something like this together, and it didn't look pretty darn close to this, to be honest, with how in-depth the information were and all of the information that we considered.
What inflation number did you use for the escalation, on that piece of the escalation?
It ended up being 7.8% annually.
So last time we did this was 11 years ago, and we still have roughly 9 million. Is that about right, Thomas? Or a little over 9?
Yeah, probably closer to 10.
Closer to 10 million left on that of our remaining INS funds. And I know you presented, Kyle, a couple months ago to us some $35 million of critical items of just on the maintenance side, not talking about any kind of renovations, obviously. Can you talk through how that existing bond money and the critical maintenance items, how that factors into the presentation here tonight on, it seems like there's some overlap possibly, but I want to understand that a little bit better.
Sure. So what the committee may or may not have articulated completely is that the items that they talked about removing from their proposal from tonight are still needs regardless of the outcome of tonight, of a potential bond. And so there are enough items that weren't addressed in the recommendation because there just wasn't the capacity with the number that they were presented with that will continue to be things that we'll have to address, and we'll have to figure out a way to fund those items. And so I think a lot of it's going to depend on this process, but the needs don't go away. The items that need to be addressed don't go away. It's just which piece and how they get paid for or funded is going to be determined with the work that these guys have set forth. I hope that answers the question.
So with our existing $10 million in bond funds, is it a way of saying, okay, we have that money to spend on critical items that we know we have multiples of that if we don't have any bond pass in our near future, and that's what we have? Or if we take this committee's recommendation and we have additional bond money in our future, that's just added to what is needed? Is that another way of saying it?
Well, I think there are a couple different prongs to that. I think one prong are items that didn't make it into the proposal, the recommendation. I think the other prong of that is you look at the timeline between now and a potential bond election in May, and then things, there again, like I mentioned earlier, things don't happen immediately. We are band-aiding lots of our systems district-wide almost weekly, and it comes at an expense. And so, we're trying to stretch the rubber band as far as we can with our systems that have failed, that are end of life, and that we know will continue to fail. And so right now we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can with those remaining funds from 2014. But a lot of those things we're being reactive with, and we can't predict what's going to fail tomorrow or next month. And so that's right now that really is how the majority of those funds are being utilized.
So we have to think about the 10 million as money that we have to hold on to tightly and be reactive until we could possibly be proactive if a bond passed in our future.
I think that is very well put. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Kyle, I'm looking at the schedule project that was from the slide, and it looks like construction on these recommendations don't begin until June of 2027.
Yes, sir. And again, these are the major projects that are within the recommendation by the committee, but there is quite some time that does lapse from May of 25 until we would actually be able to break ground and start mitigating some of the things that we discussed tonight.
I don't need an exact number, but what was the amount that didn't make it in, that was needed?
I'm going to have the CFO visit on that one.
I believe it was roughly close to 12 million that didn't make it.
Got it.
And then also something to add to what Kyle said, that if you so choose to move forward with the bond election and it is approved, it does take time for us to be able to go. So if it's approved in May, we wouldn't be able to issue any bonds and bring in the proceeds to help fund some of these projects until the earliest would be August. So that's a three-month span. So we would use a lot of that. If we had system failures during that time, we'd be able to leverage this 10 million to address that.
I think, Jason, the way you summarized that was probably as prudent as you can say it. Board, do you have any other questions for these wonderful gentlemen?
So just going back to the process, most of my questions about the process I think were answered. I guess some things, any reflections on giving us examples to show how your questions were answered during the process and how your involvement as a committee changed the ultimate outcome of the recommendation versus what was initially being presented to you?
Let me see if I understood what you said. I think the way it was delivered to us and the questions that we asked back were more a clarification of the information so that we could then decipher whether we were going to go forward with something or we were going to soft pedal that. But I thought through the entire process in each of our steps, when I went home and thought about it, I came away feeling that we got a pretty straight answer on it. And I never did feel, I didn't feel 1 ounce of defensiveness by anybody, whether it was school staff, or administration, or whether it was any teachers or anything. We just talked through this. I mean, even we got over to the bus barn and looked at things there. Questions were asked, and we got straight answers. No hesitation by anybody. So I think we were able to go and take the time that we had to think time to really decipher the information and come back and say. And what was so amazing to me was that you took 9 tables around there, and when we got down to start voting on table votes, it was amazing that of 9 tables, you'd have 7 of them all on the same page. It was that kind of a performance, and I just thought we got a good straight scoop of things. I didn't feel like we were being railroaded in any way.
Can you go back to that picture of the bond committee? I mean, you look at all these people that put their time and effort in. It's a good cross-section. And then I think y'all know as a school board, because every meeting, at least 2 of you guys were there. I think y'all all attended. Marvin was on the bus with me, right behind me. Like, he might have had the tire right underneath him, but the bus actually drives really nice. It's a little tight for us bigger people, but it rides really nice. But that level of commitment, I think somebody said, like, Marvin, I appreciate you being here on the bus committee. Marvin has seen all these facilities. He knows internally what needs to be done, or what he's seen these facilities. But he still took time out of his Saturday to go along with us to answer our questions if we had questions of him, because he's seen that. So, it was very extensive as far as getting to know what this community needs in this school district and what we need to invest back into. And those answers came in. It was a back and forth. And, the number that didn't make it in, we cut stuff even the week before that. So there was stuff, it was even more. And as we asked questions back and forth, then the school district would reevaluate to offer us something. Okay, y'all are not in favor of this. Let's get that off the table completely. Like, I think he mentioned, was it Puster and Sloan Creek? At first there was a bigger renovation there. And we did not, I think everybody had gotten together and decided, I don't know if that's right at this time. Those areas aren't needed to be renovated to that level. So there was a lot of, give and take back and forth and questions being answered, and, the school district coming back with something that we felt, these people right here all felt was appropriate for our school. And all these people are very passionate. Some of us have kids that are almost out. When you look at the timeline, I don't even know if my kids will experience any of this, right? I'm sure y'all are all thinking the same thing. And so, but it's not just about my kids. It's about all our kids. It's about the future kids that are coming in. Just because, like, when I came in here in 2010 and didn't know anybody, it was the right place to be. And we're all here because we love this community, and we want to continue for this to be the community that people want to come to. When we talk about the excellence, when we sit there and talk about our graduates and our graduate profile, that's what we want them to be, and we want the next generation that comes here to feel that same way.
Henri, do you feel that these recommendations support even our strategic plan? Do you feel that there was discussions about what we strategically want to do as a school district was a part of this process?
Yes, definitely. You know, as far as where we want to continue to go as a school district, where we are right now, that was definitely part of it. You know, we did the capital strategic planning. We looked at the strategic plan of the school district before that. So, you know, taking that into the bond committee, it all coincides with where we want to be.
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody that participated. A few of us here on the board were part of this process back in 2014, the last time we did this. And hearing you present this is, in my mind, a much better process than what I experienced the last time. And I've tried to ask questions to get at the heart of the process and the integrity of it, and feeling like it really was a committee of the community that's bringing this recommendation to us, and I appreciate your work.
Yeah, I want to definitely, I've asked a lot of questions, but I didn't ever say thanks. I know how many hours y'all put into this. I was there just a couple of times, but the hours that y'all put into it, many of you prior to this committee coming together with the capital planning. And so I just want to say thanks. I want to thank you for your attention to detail. The fact that you pushed the questions forward until you got the answers that you wanted and needed in order to make a good decision. And so I'm just very proud of the work that you've done.
I'll close the comments from the board and just reiterate a little bit of what's been said. I too served on that initial bond planning committee back in the day, maybe in 2014, and we had hoped for and asked for an integrity-driven process that was a voice of a community that was able to bring to us recommendations that they were able to discern through and analyze and make decisions. So compliments to our administration, to our consultants, BOK, to Dr. Lizzie Johnson, and to each and every one of our citizens and students who took the time and made the commitment to serve not only your children, but the children to come, which is really what we're doing this for, ultimately. And so I just want to say thank you for that. I'd hoped for what I'm receiving tonight to be the case, and it's a delight to hear you guys talk about this with the detail and the ability to answer these questions. That gives the community an understanding of the process and the recommendations from the perspective that you were able to make them, so that they know the foundation from which you're speaking is one that is the voice of the community. So thank you for y'all's commitment. Thank you to each of these parties involved and the time that you put into it. You know, we as a board didn't want to have any influence on your work, so you saw different board members at different times who didn't say a whole lot. That was not because we don't care. It's because we wanted to not be involved with influencing you all, but to answer questions when needed. And so hopefully you felt that as well. I know we intentionally took that approach. And so thank you again for coming and speaking to us tonight. It's a delight to hear from you, and we appreciate it. All right. Item 8 tonight is to consider and act on calling a special board meeting for February 13th, 2025.
Administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approves calling a special board meeting for the evening of February 13th, 2025 for consideration and possible action on calling a bond election for May 3rd, 2025.
So moved. So moved, Jeff Wood.
Second?
Second, Amy Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item tonight is to consider and act on canceling a board workshop scheduled for February 12th, since we'll be meeting on February 13th. So we're going to do this by vote since we published a calendar. So moved, Jason James. Second, Marvin Bobo. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. With that, we would be adjourned.